Hello and welcome to another adventure in... No, I'm kidding. Welcome to Brown Bagging It. It's time for Lunch and Learn, and today we have an incredible guest for you. Marty and I will be discussing a bunch of things about filling the gap with strengths, but also we're going to miss somebody special today. Christine is only here today via video, which is okay, I guess, since this whole show is video, right? But also, Daniel Bobrow is going to be our special guest. We're going to talk to him about some special marketing things as well as mountainside things. So hang in here and we'll get to it in just a moment. Marty, how you doing today?
I am fantastic, CJ. Awesome. I like this. It's a Tuesday. It's afternoon. I got my brown bag with me. Did you bring your brown bag lunch, CJ?
I am on a liquid diet right now.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Christine always talks about the brown bag, and since she's not here, I guess today I'm going to do this.
Dive in. What did you bring us today?
All right. Well, you got to keep something in mind is the night before when we're making our lunch. Like Christine always says, we go in the refrigerator. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but suddenly we realize we have all these great items in our fridge. The things that we already have within us, and we create our own lunch, making something special. Today, while I was waiting for you, CJ, I already finished my lunch. But I realized, but I realized something, CJ. Lunch is not really over until what? Until you brush your teeth, right? And that's a little bit of a hint. That's a little bit of a hint of the guy who's coming up next. And trust me, this is only a small part of what this guy is going to bring to our show today.
You know, one of the things that has always intrigued me about the concept of how do you fill in the gaps of your business or any other circumstance when we know that each one of us is just not quite enough to cover everything, right? We need to align ourselves with partners or employees or team members that can fill those gaps for us with strengths. And I was just wondering, Marty, from your standpoint, because you do a lot of speaking engagements,
yes.
Do you find that there's things in the process of preparing for speaking that you wished you had someone, or maybe you do have someone that can fill some gaps?
Well, CJ, without a doubt, when I was younger, I used to think, I could do it all. It's more affordable to do it all by myself. I can do the graphic design. I can do the camera work. I can do the preparation. I can do the story writing, all of that. But as I'm getting older, I realize that I really need that full team. I need those people who are stronger than me in those certain aspects. I have a group of mentors that I work with, guys who I'm constantly looking at to edit the way that I speak, look at the way that I teach, look through my curriculums, watch my videos a couple of times to tell me what I'm doing great and where I need a little bit of help.
Sure.
All right. So I definitely fill myself with a bunch of people. My team gets bigger and bigger all the time.
And that's a great thing when we're able to do that, when we can find the right people to fill the right kind of gaps. But speaking about gap filling, our guest is a special guest. Why don't you introduce him since you know him far better than any of us?
Definitely. Well, what's really interesting about this next guest, his name is Daniel Bobrow. We call him Danny. He's a good friend of mine. And I met him a while ago, and I was talking with him about, Danny, what's the best thing I should say? What's the best way I should introduce you? So we worked on this, and I'll tell you, we came up with like pages and pages of notes. And I said, there's Danny. This is one of those situations where the introduction is longer than the interview. So I have to get rid of some of this, and I have to really cut it down a little bit. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Danny. He's the president of AIM Dental Marketing. He has been helping dentists grow since 1989, just doing a phenomenal job. I've worked with him. He is a marketing whiz, just a real genius like that, and he's found his niche. That would be tremendous if that's all there was to Danny. But the guy also is the executive director for two incredible causes, and hopefully he'll tell us a little bit more about it. One of them is called Climb for a Cause, and the other is Smile Tree. So when I asked him straight out, what do you mean Climb for a Cause? I found out how much this guy is a mountaineer. He loves climbing mountains. I think he's got a dream of climbing the tallest mountain in every continent in the world. Wow. And if to know him, you're going to realize he can do this. All right. He is a little bit of everything. He's got multiple MBAs. Danny is just going to share with us today all kinds of stuff about his problems that he's run into with leadership and building teams, and how he has found those kinds of solutions. He's found people and opportunities to fill those gaps for himself. And we're talking about a guy who is not just building a small network here in the United States. We're talking about a guy who has been to some of the craziest places all around the world. All right, so I'm anxious to talk to him and see.
You're going to absolutely love it. Danny, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for that very unique and customized introduction. I appreciate it very much, buddy.
Definitely. It's good to see you, Danny.
I have to start off with a quick question because, having two MBAs, I think one is in finance and one is in marketing, if I remember correctly. You must be a really good researcher or something to be able to put out the effort to get 2 degrees like that. Do you believe in continuing education? I mean, it seems so, but how does that impact your work?
I definitely do, CJ. I like to live by the I can principle, which is improvement that is continuous and never ending. I will share, however, that I also look for value, and the MBA was more or less a 2-for-1 sale in that I was studying for my degree in finance at the University of Chicago, and they had an international business exchange program,
wow,
which I applied for and was accepted. And that led to a full stipend and scholarship to attend the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium. And they allowed me to apply some of the elective credits that I would have applied toward my first MBA, toward my second MBA. And so I wound up completing the second MBA in just over 1 year. So in 3 years, I got 2 MBAs when typically one MBA takes 2 years. So I got a little bit of leverage there.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
Very much so. So, Danny, I want you to get in right away to this Climb for a Cause. Tell us a little bit about this and that team or the organization you work with.
Sure. The seeds of the foundation were really planted in 1992, which you could say was this example of sibling rivalry run amok. My brother was and continues to be a practicing dentist. He volunteered for a local multi-services social agency. He contributed his time in their dental clinic. Me not being a dentist and me not having the eyesight that you'd ever want me near you with anything like a drill or a pointy instrument, led me to suggest, well, I think I could organize an event. I was about to say I like to organize events, but I didn't know that yet. At the time, but I thought I'd take a stab. So I spoke to the leadership there and said, well, why don't we do a run for the Ark? The organization's name is the Ark. And long story short, in 5 months, we had an event that attracted 650 participants. It was a 5K, 10K run.
Wow.
We raised over $30,000, and it was an ongoing event for 1 more year. And then I won't get into the politics of it, but wound up to be a conflict. But what that taught me was that I had an affinity for and a love of organizing events.
Okay.
Fast forward to 1998, and a dear friend and mentor of mine in the dental space said, you really ought to focus on dentistry. That's where your passions are. That's where your network and connections are. And that really was the birth of Climb for a Cause. So the first dentist's Climb for a Cause was 1998. We had previously done Climbs for a Cause for National Spinal Cord Injury, American Brain Tumor Association, and others. But since 1998, predominantly we focused on the oral health education and treatment side of things, specifically overseas projects. That's the difference that we try to make is overseas.
That's Climb for a Cause. So what, in a nutshell, is Smile Tree? Your other organization you're involved in.
Well, they're basically both supporting the same foundation, Marty. I did want to make that clarification, but we recognize, because I don't live on a mountain. I know that not everybody wants to climb a mountain who's a dentist that wants to raise money for charity. And so to broaden the net a little bit, we created the Smile Tree, which is a way for any dental practice and their team to, as we like to say, branch out and leave a smile as a branch office of the Smile Tree. And so that way you can support oral health education and treatment. You can benefit from the marketing spin-off, the marketing benefit, which is why one of our major taglines is to do well by doing good, which we stole from Ben Franklin. And that way you don't have to don boots and ice axes and crampons in order to raise money and make a difference. It's a glorified pen pal program, essentially.
I'm starting to get very conscious of my smile today. Does it look good enough for the camera?
As you should.
You're beautiful. You're beautiful, CJ.
Exactly. That's right. I can't take my eyes off you.
I'm more looking at going, all right, I'm glad I don't have any gaps in my teeth. Okay.
Right. Well, we could fill them in.
There you go. There you go. So since today's episode really is about filling in those gaps, Danny, the more I listen to you, the more I talk to you, I go, wow, this guy really does it all. You have your finger in every part of the business and the foundations for raising money. So it almost seems like, do you need anyone else to help you? All right.
Yeah,
I know the obvious answer is yes, of course.
You might say the reason the fact that I have my fingers in every aspect of the business was a great source of consternation for many people in the business. Like you, it was hard for me to let go, but I realized that if we want to, this is an old saying, that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you need to go with a team. You need to go together. And really, I'm sort of an unwitting and sometimes unwilling entrepreneur in that running a business requires a skill set that there are definitely gaps in my skill set. And at least to my credit, I've recognized that from pretty early on. I'm a marketer. I'm a business developer, rainmaker type that really needs other people to hold the buckets. And a lot of our growth has been constrained by challenges we've had with getting those bucket holders, those people that are far more talented than I am at expanding our bandwidth and consistently delivering quality while expanding that bandwidth so that we can have people that are much more talented on the operations side as opposed to the marketing and business development side, which is where my strengths lie. So that's one exercise that it's ongoing, it's never ending, but we are making some strides in that direction. I'm happy to say, after 32 years, I still feel like a startup because we're constantly reinventing ourselves. And I think that's the world in which we live. And I think that when things get too routinized and too much like an assembly line, that is often the beginning of the end for many organizations. The saying you may have heard is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. For a long time, our mantra has been, if it ain't broke, break it. Because if it ain't broke, it's going to break soon.
Yeah, well, the market is always changing, and you're either changing with it or you're losing out, right? And, I'm curious about one thing that it sounds like you've seen. Can you speak to the fact that sometimes the corporate side or the business side versus the not-profit side operate differently enough that they have different types of gaps that need to be filled?
Sure. They operate differently in one sense and not at all really in another. The obvious difference is that many of your, depending on the size of the nonprofit, you're dealing with volunteers. And that means you need to be able to motivate these people through means other than monetary. But, in the final analysis, if it's only money that's motivating people on the for-profit side, that's a house of cards. Because really there have been studies that show that people are motivated. Money is like fifth on the list of things that motivate people. They want to know that they're working for an organization that has a vision that's bigger than just making money. They want to work for a CEO who's cool. Yeah. They want to have a manager who cares about them. And so money really, once you've covered your basic needs, of course, to pay the rent, to see to your basic needs, money is not that motivational. So I would submit that there's not that big a gap between how to motivate a nonprofit organization and a going for-profit concern.
Well, and my thought right now is that we need to motivate people with a little bit of humor. So hang in, we'll be right back with Danny.
Filling in the gap. That reminds me, a couple of days ago, I'm walking down the street and I noticed two of the city workers digging holes. Now, what was happening was one guy is digging a hole, walking 20 feet, digging another hole. Meanwhile, another guy's following behind him, filling the holes with dirt. So I watched this for a little while, and finally the curiosity got the best of me. I walked up to him and I said, "Excuse me, guys, what are you doing?" And the first guy says, "Well, you see, it's part of the mayor's beautification program." And I go, "Really? What do you mean? I don't understand." He goes, "Well, you see, I dig a hole, I walk 20 feet, dig another hole, walk another 20 feet, dig a hole. Larry puts in a tree, and then John over there fills in the gap with the dirt." And I go, "Yeah, but you guys aren't putting in trees." No, Larry couldn't come to work today. And the mayor always told us, just because one of you can't come to work, don't mean the other two can't do their job.
Okay, that's...
Your tax dollars at
cracks
work.
me up.
Sometimes I don't know if these things are they just lighten my load or if they frustrate me because they're so whacked out.
Because there's so much truth to it, that's why.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That is so true. That is so true.
That part is very true on this one. And by the way, thank you, Marty. That perfectly fit today. That's for sure. We wanted to kind of shift directions just a little bit, Danny, and get a little bit more personal for a moment. One of the things that Marty mentioned when he was introducing you is that you have this drive right now to climb mountains and to get to the highest peaks in multiple continents. Can you tell a little bit about that? Share with us what is behind that, why you have that passion?
Sure. And it's not always, it's a difficult experience or drive to share with people who don't share the drive and haven't experienced what I have. But it's not so much about the bragging rights as it is the fact that it's a shared experience that is, if not unique, it's highly unusual. Standing at the top of a peak or even en route to the peak is just a spectacular experience. It tends to simplify and distill kind of the essence of what being alive is about. When you really push yourself physically and mentally and need to maintain your composure and a sense of humor, some of the challenges that I face is that I have a pulmonary issue. So it's hard for me to breathe at sea level, let alone altitude. And that has made it particularly difficult for me to reach the truly high peaks. I've been as high as 23,000 feet.
Wow.
And have summited 3 of the 7 summits. And there's only one that's higher than that, and that's Everest. But the one thing I think that most people who have been on an expedition with me would say that I bring to the table is a sense of humor. I've been referred to more than once as the life of the party. And I realize that that's really important because attitude is everything. When you're up against it and you have a bad day, and it's more uncommon to be healthy than it is to be sick when you're at altitude, because your resistance is worn down. There's a lot of dust. There's oxygen deprivation. Food can play havoc with your system, and you got to stay positive. You just got to stay positive. And my plans right now have been delayed but not derailed because, as Marty knows, 5 months ago I had a ski accident and fractured my pelvis.
Oh, wow.
And so right now I'm just working on getting back into any kind of reasonable exercise routine so that when ski season returns in November, I can get back and be an instructor and serve as a ski patroller. But the why we climb, you've heard it said, I think Hillary, why do you climb Everest? Because it's there. The fact that there's an inherent challenge and that it's an unusual feat to achieve has a good deal to do with it. But it's just the views. The other thing is I spoke to a flight seeing pilot when I climbed Mount McKinley, Denali, which is the highest peak in North America. And I asked her if she had considered climbing. And she said, no, I would never consider climbing for 2 reasons. Number one, I see what you guys are climbing over, because when you fly an airplane, you can see all the crevasses hundreds of feet deep. And there's these narrow snow bridges that you cross. She said the other reason is I've never seen a group of people happier to get from one place to another. And to me that made sense, but it really misses the point because, yeah, you could say, well, God, if you're so miserable, then why do it? Well, you know what? I spend most of my time looking forward to being somewhere, and then when I'm there, I look forward to getting off of there. But I'm always looking forward to something. I'm always excited. Food never tasted so good. Beer never tasted so good as when you haven't had it for 3 or 4 weeks and you've been eating ramen noodles and oatmeal and hardtack and beef jerky and weak coffee and odd tasting water because you have to purify the water with iodine tablets. So a lot of deprivation. And then when you come back, it feels really good. Like banging your head against the wall. It feels really good when you stop. So now I hope it all makes sense.
Yes. So it really is all about it. Like everyone says, it's about the journey. It's not really about the destination. It's not getting there.
It's very much about the journey.
The path. Right. Right. So what would you tell the rest of our audience here, Danny? Because I know you're a mountaineer. You are a ski patroller. You love bicycling. You were doing running. You just do a lot. You're constantly driving and pushing yourself, which is in itself very inspirational to the rest of the world to say, here's a guy who's doing all of this, plus running a successful business, plus running these great charity organizations. What would you tell somebody? How does somebody just get started?
Right. Well, I think that's the key. Confucius said a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And it's sort of like a momentum thing. When you start riding a bike or you start running, and this is going to be true whether you're an ultra marathoner or are shooting for your first 5K, the first mile is always the least comfortable because it's like letting a motor run in a car. You got to let the oil lubricate the engine. You got to kind of get into a groove. But success breeds success. I know I'm throwing out a lot of cliches and platitudes, but they really are apt. Rather than being daunted by the enormity of your goal, I think Mike Collins calls them BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. You might want to run a marathon and you've never gotten off the couch. Well, I would say go walk around the block for 20 minutes and then try to walk around the block for 25 minutes, maybe work up to an hour. Make it interesting. If it's boring in and of itself, see, for me, it's not because I'm always visualizing or working on projects in my head, which is another skill, I think, or it's just the way I am. But bring your earbuds, and listen to music. And then walk for 5 minutes and run for 1 minute. And then run for 5 minutes and walk for 5 minutes and run for 2 minutes. Have a plan, in other words. And that's how you get started. But you have to start with your why, as you know, Marty and CJ.
Yeah.
You've got to have a reason for wanting to do it. And the thing is, now I always have this base level of fitness, so I always feel pretty good. Like today, I got to the club at 5:45 and worked out for 2 hours. That's why I'm as mellow as I am, because Marty knows, at the end of the day, you don't want to interview me at the end of the day if I haven't had a workout, right? Because I get a little stressed out.
Yeah, I understand that. I wanted to prep myself the first time to do a 5K, and I didn't know how to begin, so I just started to try and run, and I exhausted myself. And then someone told me about that method of, walk 4 minutes, run 1, and then a couple weeks later, walk 3 minutes and run 2, and just slowly invert that until you're just running the whole way. And I gotta say, it actually works because your body gets so used to it that it gets easier. And the other thing,
the thing to recognize too, is that less is more. I have a neighbor. He said, my buddy challenged me to see who can run 50 miles in 1 month. So what does he do? He goes out and runs. Third day, he pulls a muscle in his calf. Oh. And he's 20 years younger than me, but it doesn't matter. If you haven't been doing something and you just get off the couch, you're a lot better off because is that motivational? Now he's got to nurse an injury and whatever other issues he's dealing with. But, you got to enjoy the journey and the process. If you're not enjoying it, it's okay to not enjoy it a little bit because any change, our minds are wired to not like change. So when we're trying to rewire our neural pathways, there's resistance. It's physiological. But if you have that bigger objective in mind, you can push through it, but just don't push yourself too much. Just be consistent because the tortoise wins the race.
There you go. I want to throw in one other thing, just so you don't think that I'm a slug. Okay. I, believe it or not, was in a triathlon a few years ago. And what it was a 3-man triathlon. There was no way I was going to do everything myself. I did the bicycling. I have my brother, who is an air sea rescue for the fire department. He did the swimming. And my nephew, who's much younger than me, did the running, and he is a fitness coach. So you know who is the slow person in the group. But I can at least say I finished this triathlon. All right. And we beat every single group that was slower than us. So I got that.
Well done. Well done. Well, I do want to speak to that just real briefly if I have the time, is that when you do an event that's long enough with enough people in it, yes, you're by definition going to have people who are stronger than other people.
Yes.
But everybody has a bad day. And one thing I learned in the mountains is that if you're having a bad day, the best way to deal with it is to get outside your head and focus on somebody else's need. And when they know that you have their back, then there's this team, my dynamic that gels. And then all of a sudden, everybody knows that they care about each other, and the energy level magically rises in the group. And I bet you had an experience like that, Marty, because you were biking, and no matter how strong or fast or slow you were, you knew that there were people counting on you, and they knew that you could count on them.
There you go. I love it because it really ties in with our theme today of that filling in the gaps, that I had to find the rest of this team in order to compete and do this whole thing. So it was a great experience. So I look forward to never having to do it again.
Well,
even,
felt good when you stopped, huh?
Yes.
Even this show, to an extent for us, has been like an athletic event. We each had to learn new skills to make this happen. We had to learn how to cover for each other, which is another way of saying how to fill the gap, right?
Yep.
Sometimes we had to try and encourage each other past those down days, because certainly we've all had those days. Well, I'll at least admit, for me, when the technology goes bad, it's a real bad day for me.
You can't even yell at anybody.
That's right.
Gentlemen, do I have time to leave with one little bit of information?
Please do.
And Marty has heard me because we're both members of Toastmasters. And what a great organization to help, identify people that are at different levels. You think about the athletic event analogy, but people that want to overcome their fear of public speaking and become a better speaker. We've seen people grow and develop in amazing ways. And now, the point I wanted to make is that we've seen people, I've known people throughout my life that have so much raw talent. They have the energy, they've got the drive. The one thing that's keeping them from achieving their goals and excelling beyond their own dreams is a lack of organization skills.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would submit that if you, and I'm not an organized person by nature, but 35 years ago when I started my business, I knew that if I was going to be successful, I had to acquire these skills, because otherwise I was going to trip all over myself. I was going to disappoint people. And that's no way to build a team either, right?
Correct.
True.
Work at getting organized so that you don't have to waste a lot of brain cells keeping track of things. If you have a meeting, know how to organize an effective meeting that respects the people's time, determine whether you need a meeting. And I like to say master the 4 Ds of organization, which are to do, defer, delegate, or discard. And it's all about team building. If you're a one person starting your own business, you may have to do a lot more things than you really want to. But at some point, you should only do the things that drive your passion and that are urgent and important. If they're important but not urgent, you can defer them. If they're not within your wheelhouse, then you delegate them. And if they're not urgent or important, you should discard them. And I coach my dental health partners, which is how we refer to our clients, that the 2 most valuable instruments in their office, or 3 really, are not their scanner or their CEREC machine or these other clinical tools. It's their scanner, their shredder, and their telephone. Because without those, you can't get organized and you can't communicate with the outside world. And when that telephone stops ringing, we're all in trouble.
Definitely.
Okay, remind me one more time. You got do, you got defer, you got delegate. What was the 4th?
Discard.
Discard.
Discard. That's what it was. Yeah.
That's
I
an
like
important one too.
See,
There
I
you go.
was in my head. I was thinking delete, and I knew you hadn't said delete.
Oh.
Close enough. Close enough.
So I know pretty soon CJ is going to go. We got to jump to a segment. But Danny, I hope that you can stay around for a little bit more because I'd like to get your feedback on some of the other things we're doing here. But if you can't, I understand. And I just want to thank you so much for the information you shared with our audience today.
Pleasure was mine, gentlemen. I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to do my best to stick around. I can't wait to see what's in store.
Great.
All right,
Well,
awesome.
next, since we're all missing Christine already, we're going to jump to her deep dive on the book.
Awesome.
Hello again, fellow Brown Dragoners. Week 2 of deep dive into this book by Marcus Buckingham. Go put your strengths to work. Can you see that very well? Go put your strengths to work. Last week, I talked about that assessment and getting out there and taking the assessment that there was a different one than the book had started with. I took that assessment. I was disappointed. I was disappointed what my standout roles were. They were, for the curious, they were teacher and provider. And at the bottom was like creator and entrepreneur, which is ironic because I would exactly say the opposite of myself. So right from the get-go, I'm struggling with what Marcus Buckingham is putting out, but I continue to read forward. And the book is organized in the 6 steps that is the discipline to put your strengths to work as he defines them. Step 1 is bust the myths. There's a few myths out there, and those myths, there are 3 myths that he outlines. As you grow, your personality grows. Myth, the truth is that as you grow, you become more of who you already are. Well, if you were having some doubts like me, there are some questions to go through. Like, remember, this is a book that you are performing as you are reading. You are engaging fully. And so the questions to ask each myth is, how does this myth serve you? What would it cost you to stop believing the myth? And then finally, how would it benefit to believe the truth? And I would just suggest rethink that question as, how would it benefit you to suspend judgment? So then you can move forward without all the energy of believing the truth. You grow the most in the area of your weakness. No, you grow the most in the area of your strength, says Marcus Buckingham. And then this one really hit home. A good team member does whatever it takes to help the team. And the truth, according to Marcus Buckingham, is a good team member deliberately volunteers his strengths to the team most of the time. And that one actually really hit home with me. I recently had to step out of a position where I was not being asked to lead with my strengths. And it was a volunteer position. It was a very difficult decision to make. So that one really hit home with me. I really gained a lot from the chapter, Bust the Myths. Then we move into the second step of this discipline of moving to putting our strengths to work. And that is get clear. And what are you getting clear on? What your strengths are. So part of that is the assessment that you take. But then Marcus Buckingham gives us this acronym to really assess what our strengths are. And that acronym is the word SIGN, SIGN, where S is success, I is impact, G is growth, and N is for needs. So when you are trying to discover your strengths, or consider what your personal strengths may be, you're going to think, oh, what have I already had success in? That's a S in sign. Or, I said impact, but actually it's instinct. Like instinctively, this kind of lends to those statements where you're like, when I get involved with something, I can't help but, and for me, that is, I can't help but start organizing or cleaning. So I guess that's a strength for me. Yay. No, there's more to consider. So signs, instinct, growth. And the growth is this thing that you're identifying as a strength, something that's just way easy for you to learn. Maybe everyone else is like, oh, that's kind of tricky. And you're like, no, it's not. It's wicked easy. So then that would be growth. That might be something that you would consider for strengths. And then N is the needs. And that kind of comes to the after. like if after you've done it, you find yourself having to get back to there, you just need to be there. It's that thing that you keep trying to apply just because it feels right when you do. So when you're trying to figure out what your strengths are in the Get Clear chapter or Get Clear step, you use sign to identify those strengths. And then you write some strength statement cards and you check them out and you kind of measure them to see how they work. I hope you're sticking along with me. We'll move into steps 3, 4 next time on Brown Bagging It.
Well, I gotta say that this has been an interesting book review because I didn't expect her to say, I'm not buying some of this. Danny, I don't know if you were able to hear some of that, but I've put you back on screen here because I'm wondering if you agree with any of this. Do you agree with the fact that we can take a look at things from the standpoint of success, instinct, growth, and then need? Or is there a simpler way of looking at our business perspective as far as how to use our strength?
Yeah, honestly, I would need time to process that because I watched an interesting program yesterday, which I don't even know what all his politics are, but his name is Jordan Peterson, and I know he's a controversial figure. But one thing he said that really stuck with me is that just because you read something, his test was if it made him feel weak when he spoke about it, then it meant to him that he hadn't really taken the time to truly understand the meaning behind it. And a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this, we tend to get motivated by what's something we hear, and then we spout it off because it sounds good and maybe makes us sound intelligent. But I think we need to take a lot more time to process information and to really evaluate it. I think that's an interesting paradigm that she shared. And I will tell you that I went to the Marcus Buckingham website and tried to download the assessment. I was hoping to complete the assessment in time to have this talk. But when I got the code, it didn't work. So maybe that's part of the multitasking myth. I should have just been paying attention a little more closely. But I will say that it makes sense, I think, a lot of sense to reality check our own beliefs and our own self-talk. Even when I say that I'm not particularly good at certain aspects of running a business, that I believe that to be true. I'm confident and comfortable. It doesn't make me feel weak or I feel dispassionate about it, which is the place to be. It's not something I'm proud of or ashamed of. It's something that I believe to be true.
Sure.
And therefore, when you get to that point, now you can start to address it. But you have to really be on firm ground in terms of understanding what your reality is. And we need to be checked. Sometimes check ourselves, sometimes be checked by others. That's what wives are for, right, guys?
I'm not going to comment on that one.
Well, it's a good
Well, I think
point.
it's a good thing.
I
think wives can be good.
Yeah. I think that the fact that what you're saying, or at least what I'm hearing, is that we need to double check it. Do we believe that? Do we see the truth in that? Sure. So that we can actually find a way to own it before we start spouting it off to somebody else.
Exactly. Own it is a great term. Really, really understand it and then choose to own it or not. But you have to fully understand it first. And I don't think there's any substitute for time. I mean, I think I'm a quick study, but I think sometimes I'm a little too quick.
Yeah.
You need to really sort of let things ferment a while.
I love this book. I don't know how much you read, Danny. I'm assuming you read quite a bit. You get your nose in a book as often as possible. I love this book because it seems like there's a lot of assessments throughout the book. I'm going to learn chunks of it. I read these books usually from the middle, then a little from the beginning, then the end. I jump back to the middle. I jump all over. I rarely sit and grab one of these books from front to end.
And I heard that about the book. I think that's a wonderful thing because it forces you then to evaluate. I mean, it's inherent in the book. It's not really so much a book as a course then, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm looking forward to this one.
All right. Well, at this point, let's take a listen to our youth leader that we interviewed this time around. Whoops. And something just happened where the file disappeared. So hold on just a moment.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to my new friend, Alexis. There is so much about this little girl that I just learned, and it is too much for me to introduce her. So, Alexis, tell us about some of your accomplishments.
All right, so I play the viola. I am a first degree fourth point in Taekwondo. I raised monarch butterflies. I built benches for Paulus Park. I
Wow.
done a lot.
Okay. What out of all of these things, what is the thing that you'd say you're most proud of?
The one I did list, Unplugged Fest, my event I hosted.
Okay, what's Unplugged Fest? Give the audience a little detail.
So I went to overnight camp for a month, and when I got back, I was like, why are we spending so much time on this technology? So I decided to create this event where we could unplug from devices and into activities in the community, which is my platform for Junior Miss Lake Zurich.
That's cool. That's true. Junior Miss Lake Zurich.
Yes.
What is that?
That is a pageant system that I'm in that is based on community service.
Okay, so other than Unplugged Fest, what other kind of community service have you done?
I've done making dog toys. I have volunteered at a drive-in food bank. I have done just a lot of community service because from this year and last year, I did 200 hours of community service.
Wow, and she is only 12 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's awesome. Let me jump back to Unplugged Fest. How big was your team? How many people?
I took a village to make this event.
Yeah, I'm sure. But if you were to guess, how many volunteers did you have helping you?
I probably had like 15 people or so.
That's incredible. All right, so why so many people? Why not just do it with a couple?
Because I needed the different skill sets of different people. Because I had 2 people for the website. I had 2 people from Gratitude Generation helping me out. I had 1 person local to help me out. I had like just add a few volunteers the day of. I had a lot of help from my family too on the day of and throughout the entire project, just helping me out with just doing it all.
Well, I'll tell you, I was at Unplugged Fest and it ran so smoothly. There's a lot of adults that I know who could probably take some lessons from you. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you see in your future?
I want to be a biomechanical engineer to help with like making a prosthetic leg or a paw for animals, but also to help people be able to cohabit with animals without destroying their habitat, but also being able to have something like this building we're in right now, or having a nice big park or streets just without harming the habitat.
Sure. I like this, that your goals are to help others, whether they be other people or other or animals. I think that's tremendous. Okay,
Thank you.
how do young kids start? How can other young kids hope to be Alexis?
So I gotta say, one of the big things is getting involved with something with community service. I think that is kind of where you want to start off as, or finding something you're good at that you like to do, and finding a way that you can take that skill set that you like to do and say, hey, there's something that works with this skill set. I want to do that to help the community. Like,
Okay.
there's one thing on Gratitude Generation, which helps kids specifically find ways to help participate in community service.
Excellent. All right, last chance, just look into the camera and tell the youth of the world, what should they be doing right now?
I say find something you like doing, because community service is mostly about kind of you enjoying it, but the helping people is the big part, but you enjoying it is what a real outcome you want to have is for yourself. So find something that you're good at and find some way to put community service in there.
On behalf of Brown Bag and the team, I want to say thank you. It's been so nice meeting you, and you're making me feel like I got to get out there and do something. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay!
What
What an
amazing
impressive lady. You know, at that rate, I'm going to look like a piker.
No kidding. No kidding.
5
I'll tell
years.
you. Afterwards, I'll tell you, she was listing so many additional things that she's doing, and she doesn't look anywhere near burnt out. She is just on the go.
Fresh as a daisy.
Yeah, exactly. So this last one was the Unplugged Fest. So she had about 25 vendors just doing, companies, travel agency, yoga, taekwondo, all of this cool stuff there. They were doing demonstrations about other things kids can do other than just looking at their screen or their computer.
I'm
Okay.
sorry I missed it, man. I drove by. I just got there a little late.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you did miss it. It was awesome. It was really neat to see the Taekwondo demonstration. And then the finale was to have this little girl, not only who was running the event, did the final thing where she punched through some boards to show that she was a black belt in Taekwondo. Okay.
Wow.
Oh my God. I was just like, who is this girl? Right. And then afterwards, I talked to her. She's planning another event about all businesses that do community service. So this was ones that you could get involved in to help yourself. The next one is she wants a bunch of businesses who help other people. So
We got to get our Toastmasters group there.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, she's got her head on right. Yeah, just an amazing young lady.
Well, I hate to say this, guys, but our clock is ticked away, so we're going to have to say goodbye for now. But Danny, thank you so much for being on the show and helping us out and giving us some insights.
Thank you, gentlemen. Please thank Christine for me. It was a load of fun, and I'll be happy to do it again.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Danny. Talk to you soon.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.